Today is Thursday, yes, July 16th, 2020. My name is Ezekiel Medina. I'm interviewing Guillermo Espinal for the Rutgers Latino New Jersey History Project and the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Mr. Espinal, that this interview, audio, video files, and transcript will be placed in the Nettie Lee Benson Latin American Collection at UT Austin and the Rutgers Oral History Archives. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or discuss, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you would like to discuss, please make sure to bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record your verbal consent. Voces wish...
Oh, you cut off. Sorry. There you go.
Now it works?
Yep.
Okay. Voces wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation at the Benson Library at UT Austin and the Rutgers Oral History Archives. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to Voces. So, I need your response to these 3 questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. Do you give Voces consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Benson Library?
Yes.
Do you grant Voces copyright over the interview and any material you provide?
Yes.
And do you agree to allow us to post this interview on the internet, where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's begin. So the first question I have isn't really a question, it's more just tell me about yourself. Where are you from and where do you live?
I am originally from the Dominican Republic. I was born in DR. I'm raised in Santiago, in the city. When I was 5, I came to the US. My dad came first, of course, and then he did all the paperwork to bring me and my mom. We moved to New Jersey. When I first came, I lived in West New York for 10 or so years. Growing up, went to Catholic school. Best 8 years, JK, not really. After grammar school, I went to 3 different high schools. 2 of those were Catholic schools as well. Tuition was raised, so I ended up going to a charter school for my 3rd and 4th year. Out of my family, of my immediate family, I am the first to go to college and graduate. It did take me a little bit more time than I wanted to, like almost 5.5 years. But yeah, I majored in IT. Currently working as a analyst at UBS.
So have you always lived in West New York, you and your family?
When I first came, I lived in West New York. We rented a space next to my godmother's house. Then we moved out because my brother was being born, so we needed more space. We moved to Union City, which is the next town over, and we were there for 4 to 5 years. And then once my dad had enough money, he bought a house here back in West New York. So since 2011, we've been in West New York after moving from Union City. Sorry.
Can you describe what West New York is like, what that whole area is like, Union City, West New York, North Bergen?
West New York, it's like a Hispanic New York City. Everybody's out and about, shopping, going to work. You're on the street, somebody's going somewhere, you can't just stand there and just, oh, I'm here in in West New York or Union City, because people are moving around. You're gonna get run over if you're standing there in the middle. So yeah, that's how I would say this area is. It's just the city, but full of Hispanics.
And which groups do you see the most when you go about in the city?
It's mixed. It's not like you see, oh, it's full of Cubans, oh, it's full of Dominican. It's mixed. Everybody, you'll see a little bit of everything in this county, period. Hudson County. the majority, it's your main Hispanics, Cubans, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, but you'll get your mix of Mexicans, you'll get your mix of Salvadorians, and that's basically, for example, the high school in my town in West New York. That's basically what you'll see is a few, white kids, but then the majority of the kids that go to this school, it's basically Hispanics, South Americans, yeah.
So, how have you seen West New York change then since the pandemic started?
There's the only change I've seen is there's less people out about. Obviously, it's there's people that do take this seriously, and are just want to stay home. If they go out, they just go out for the necessities. But then there's also some people that just like to hang out in front of the McDonald's or hang out in front of the post office because that's what they do daily. That's what they know. It's they don't want to change or adapt to what's going on. In my opinion, um, uh, ignorance maybe. But yeah, not much has changed in my opinion. That's why maybe New Jersey has probably one of the highest cases in the country.
Okay, so do you remember where you were when you first heard about this virus?
Virus? Yeah,
Yeah.
I was at work. With at work, the news is always on. They're always the stock exchange is always going on. So if anything, working at a bank, if anything affects the flow of money, it's going to be mentioned. And so I kind of knew back in December all the talk about it. Yeah.
And did you take it serious when you first heard it?
So when I first heard it, so the way I just listened to the doctors. So back then, the doctors were saying, "Hey, it's not a big deal right now, right? So you don't have to wear a mask." So my part-time job, I do work at Whole Foods 3 days a week, and I would see in those early months, February, March, people wearing face masks, and they were always saying, "Yo, you don't really need to wear a face mask." Or in those early stages, so I was one of those people like, why are people wearing face masks? He said, this is not that big of a deal. They said that you don't need to wear a face mask. What's the big deal? When the cases started spiking and it got more serious, and then okay, this is really serious. But I was always in the mindset, whatever the doctors say, I'll just whatever, just do it. So before it was no mask, now it's masks. I put on my mask every day just cause. So I may not when I did have COVID, I didn't have any symptoms. But so I know that if I were to catch it again, I probably won't have anything again. But I could affect other people. That I understand. That's why I just listen to whatever the doctors say. If they say that we can stop this by just putting on a mask and washing your hands, just okay, that's simple enough. I can do that.
So you just told me that you had the virus. Can you talk about what that was like finding out that you had that? How did you
So
even go about the process of finding out that you were positive?
so the whole so it's a story.
This is
It
what we're here for.
so early March, um, my little brother got sick, right? So he had a fever one night and he was having cold sweats for 3 days. Like overnight, he was just sweating a lot, even though it wasn't hot. Like the air was on. Um, but at that time, they weren't giving tests unless you were like coughing, you had fevers for like, so the whole time I was like, oh, he's fine. He just has the flu probably. Because he didn't show these symptoms that they were mentioning on the news. A couple of days later, my dad gets a fever and then he has headaches. But again, that's the only two symptoms he has. And when we call, like, hey, he may have it. Can we get tested? Like, nah, he probably doesn't have it. Just stay home, quarantine, whatever the case is, right? During this whole time, mind you, I still was going to work because this whole time we had this thought that it's nothing because they're saying it's probably isn't it. Just take time off for the fever. Then one night my mom was having like chest tightness. And at that point I was like, all right, fine, let's go. I don't want to call an ambulance because people, you don't know who goes in an ambulance nowadays. So I was like, I'll just drive you there. That'll probably be safer. And I'm assuming that night or interaction with my parents, when they got tested, the following day we got tested, right? Me and my brother. Um, After they both tested positive, and then the following day after me and my brother got tested, we found out our results, and I was the only one positive. He wasn't. But again, during that whole time period between my parents getting the result and between me getting my second test and becoming negative, I didn't have anything. Not one symptom that I seen on TV that they mentioned.
And so then, are those all the people in your household?
In this floor, there's under us is my grandmother, my aunt, and my uncle. Between them, my aunt was the only one who was positive. Everybody else downstairs was negative. They all got tested, which is weird because my aunt was in the same room with my grandmother for a good week when she was showing these symptoms, and we were just saying, no, she just has a cold. She just has a cold. And after fighting with the testing place, my uncle finally got the test because they were rejecting her because she didn't have a fever. She just had a cough. And when she tested positive, that's when we were like, oh snap, we got to separate my grandmother and my aunt, because my grandmother is 70, almost 80 years old. So she back then, she's in that range where it's like, if she gets it, it's going to be very hard to to keep her safe. So we just separated them and went on from there.
Okay, so the testing problem was something that was happening for us in Jersey, like big time, because that happened to a lot of my friends as well. When did you see, or did you ever see West New York switch it up and start having testing sites?
So that's the thing. In West New York itself, there was never a testing site. The testing site that we had to go to was in Union City, which, to give you an idea, it's not that far from where I live. I live on 56th Street. The testing site was on 43rd. So it was like a 10-minute drive. And it was by appointment. The appointment setup was like you would set up an appointment for 3 days in advance. So if I would set up an appointment on Friday, I would go on Tuesday. And there would never, when I went, there was maybe like a 10-minute wait. So yeah, I never experienced, what you see, hour-long lines. I never experienced that here when I went to get tested.
So how did you and your family continue to get your information about COVID? Was it just the news, or?
So my mom got her news from Univision. That's the only place you get her news from. And then I like to dwell into the unknown, so I would get my news from everywhere, whether it's Fox News or MSNBC. I like the both extremes, both sides to see what's going on. But at the end of the day, I would just follow what the CDC would say. That's basically it. Yeah.
Okay. So can you walk me through what was going through your head when you found out you were positive, even though you had no symptoms? Were you scared?
No, I wasn't scared. I've always been the type that doesn't get sick out of my family. So when I found out that I was positive and wasn't showing any symptoms, I'm like, oh, of course, that's what I do. But I was also kind of upset that out of my family, the only one who didn't catch it was my brother, who always gets sick. That's the guy who always has the fever, always has the cough. And out of the two, it's kind of funny how I catch it and he doesn't. He got tested twice, never had it.
Okay. What about your family in DR? Have you been keeping in contact with them, and how has it been
Um,
hitting them over there?
Most of my family are here. The family that I have in DR, I'm not close with, so I wouldn't be able to tell you how they're doing. I really haven't heard anything. The only family that really has been affected by COVID has been my grandmother's sister. She had diabetes, and when she had it, it complicated her breathing. So she passed away when she got it. And her husband had Alzheimer's, who also had it and died a couple of days later after she passed away. So those are the only losses that I know of from my family.
Well, I'm sorry for your losses. Um, so how has COVID-19 affected your work?
Um, well, once I found out that my mom was positive, I let Whole Foods know right away. I'm like, hey, even though I didn't get tested yet, I just let them know, hey, someone in my household that where I live has it. And right away they told me just to stay home for 2 weeks, just to quarantine myself so I don't get anybody else sick, even though wasn't showing symptoms yet. Um, and then for my UBS job, once the pandemic was getting out of hand in March, we were all sent home. So we were all working from home since March for my morning job.
And when we had that big lockdown, what was it like in your house and in the community? Was it eerie for you to see that?
So I remember one day when I went out and I went on Burger Line. So Burger Line in my town is a very busy avenue. It's kind of like it's not like Broadway because there's no Broadway on Burger Line, but it's full of your mom and dad shops. All across the avenue. There's all, of course, there's your Walgreens, your CVS's, but mainly it's your your little bodegas, your little restaurants that are all over Burger Line. And one day I walked out and it was completely empty. When I say empty, I mean empty. There was no cars parked in the streets. There was nobody. I was just like, whoa, I have never seen this street this empty before ever. There was no buses. This street is always packed with the little Evie buses. There was not one bus zooming by that street that day. I was like, this is crazy. Yep. In regards to the lockdown, I just couldn't see my girlfriend. I was still going to work because I was an essential worker. So I was still traveling, in and out of the house. But I wasn't, I was just going to work. I wasn't going out to see people. I was just, going to work.
And did Whole Foods, how did they adapt, right? So you said at the beginning, people were wearing masks, but they were saying now you don't really have to. Now, what is it like? What has changed?
So it's mandatory now. So everybody, not everybody, because they have a really, in my opinion, a dumb rule where if you have a medical condition, you can just say you have a medical condition. You don't have to wear masks to go into the store. And in my opinion, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because you can just say anything's a medical condition and get away with it, and that's what most people do when they want to get their way when it comes to shopping at Whole Foods.
Is this rule still in place?
Oh yeah,
Really?
I just found out about it on Saturday. It's been there for a while.
Interesting. So um, have your duties changed at Whole Foods, or are they pretty much the
I
same?
if anything, I just do less work. I worked at the deli department. Our department was also in charge of all the hot food that was out, all the salad bar food. That's all gone. So we're not putting out as much food. And also there's not as many people that usually shop. So normally, if I'm not doing anything, and again, I work 6 to 9, so I'm only working 3 hours towards the end of the day, where it's not as busy. So usually the leadership would just have me at the door or helping out other departments that may need help, just to they just don't want me standing around doing nothing. But when I'm at the door is when I'm checking, making sure we're counting the people that come in, making sure people have masks, and that's when I found out that rule, that if they say they have a medical exception, we can't ask what it is. You just say, okay, have fun shopping.
Is this the Whole Foods in Edgewater?
Yes.
So how have you seen the difference in the community response, if you have at all, between Edgewater and West New York?
So it's the same. I think it's the same. So here, there's people that still think this is not a big deal. In Edgewater, there are people that think this is not a big deal. There's this lady that shops maybe 3 times a week, and she has her mask on, but she has a little sign below that says, this is all BS, and that people are just hysterical. And she walks around shopping with that sign on her below her mask. So I think it's the same. I think whatever what's going on in the country, or where there's people that wear masks and there's people that don't wear masks, happens here in whatever community you live in. Because I think it's the same here in West New York, where there's people that if you go on the streets don't wear masks and they just don't think the mask is going to help. And it's the same in Edgewater. The population in Edgewater, mostly who shop there are white, and I want to say 80% of the people get it. It's mask help, and then there's that ignorant 20% that are just like, you guys are all crazy.
Do you often have conversations about this, about wearing masks with your friends or your family? Are there people in your inner circle that are still questioning this?
No, nobody that I talk to. I want to say everybody understands what the purpose of the mask is. It's an inconvenience. It's annoying, but we're just doing it just to get this over with. If this would have been over with probably a while ago, if one, we had the information, but if people just listen, if people just, hey, do ABC and this is gonna go away in 1, 2, 3, and then, but people just don't. Everything, especially now, everything is, if you do this, you're part of that party, and if you do that, you're part of that party. But it's like, we're just doing it to stay safe. It's not a party thing.
Are there any financial worries in your family since the pandemic started?
I don't think so. My dad did get laid off. But it's not like, in my opinion, it's not like he doesn't have any money saved up. He does. I think he should be fine. In any case, he's 57, so it's not like he can't get a job. I've told him, like, hey, there's jobs out there. If you want, I can apply for you. And he's like, it's okay. But I think we're fine.
You said that your brother lives with you, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
was sick but wasn't tested positive for COVID. Is he in school still?
Yes, he's a junior. He's a senior. Sorry, he's about to be a senior.
Oh, okay. And how has he been coping with remote learning?
Well, he just the way I saw it, because I really didn't ask. I was too busy working. But when I would pass by his room, it looked like he was very comfortable. Because he was just laying in his bed. And the way it worked is my understanding was they would just send him assignments and he just had to complete the assignment, which there wasn't really much like teacher interaction. It was more of a, here's the assignment, do it. You have any questions, let me know. And it worked out for him. He didn't have any complaints.
In your neighborhood, have you noticed a significant impact from COVID where you live, in the people that you know in your neighborhood?
No, not really. I don't really interact with people in my neighborhood. And I'm very, wake up, work, sleep. Repeat.
Okay. So how, if at all, have any of the current social movements impacted your daily life?
uh, uh, it brings up the conversation in my group chats. That's for sure. Whenever there's a video out there, it's always shared immediately. And then we always talk about it, about the situation, how it could have been handled, I like to play devil's advocate. I always like to know both sides of the story. You can't just take, in my opinion, you just can't take just the one side and know everything from that one side. You got to get the full story first, and then after you have the full story, give it a real opinion on something.
Have you always been having these conversations in your group chats, or is this something that has started recently?
It's always, if there's always been videos out there, whether it's videos about the police, whether it's memes, whatever the case is, it's shared in my group chat, and it's talked, whether it's with family, whether it's friends, with friends. I feel like any how would I want to say it? Anything big that happens on the internet is probably shared amongst my group, whether, like I said, it's a video or a post, and it's discussed, depending on said video or post.
In your opinion, then, do you believe that these social movements are exacerbating our problem or solving them?
I feel like it's a little bit of both, because I do think ideas can be easily manipulated to where that idea is no longer a good idea. So I feel like, so for example, the idea of defunding the police, for example, that's always brought up, right? Is it a bad idea? I think it's a bad idea. You don't, for example, I feel like, in regards to just that, if you want more accountability, you want them to be better trained, better equipped, so you get, the full story and whatnot. And if to do that, you would have to actually increase funding, right? But then the conversation of defunding the police was just, oh, look, they just want to abolish the police. They just want, that whole idea was just taken and manipulated into a way where it took a whole left turn, where they don't want to. I mean, there's people that want to abolish the police, of course, but they just want to, redistribute the funds to other groups, to better deal with, societal issues, and that I do agree with. But then again, people just take ideas and just crumble them, till it's not a good idea anymore.
Were there any protests in West New York that you saw?
There was one. There was a little one that went to town hall. Yeah.
So you seem like a busy person. How do you think about leaving the house now? Like, what is that process like for you going out?
Leaving the house has always been just, going to work. Now that, it's easier to go out, like, for example, to go, if am I going to my girlfriend's house, I'm going to the mall to do shopping. The only difference now than before is, don't forget the mask. Because that drive back.
Mask? No, you have you done it?
Oh, I've done it. Darn it. I stop, get to work. I'm like, shoot, I left my mask at home. I got to go back and drive home.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I always have like 3 on me, so.
Now there's always one in my car. There's always one in my bag.
Yep. How has it been for you socially? Like, I see you have your group chats, you're chatting with your buds and your friends, but how has it been for you not to really physically interact with people outside of your house?
Um, See, that's the thing. The normal people that I interact with are usually my coworkers at Whole Foods, so I still see them most of the time when I work with them. And then now that the restrictions here in Jersey are settling down a little bit, I visit my girlfriend now. So it's not as bad as before, where it was straight to work and then straight home. Like there was no in between. Yeah, but for me, it's pretty normal right now.
Yeah, this is like my dream too. I don't want to leave ever, to
Yeah,
be
like
honest.
for me, I'd rather be in bed all day and just that's fine with me. I don't need to go out.
um, what are some of the things that you've noticed change since the pandemic that you'd like to see stick around?
Change. I, I don't know. That's the thing with the pandemic. It hasn't really affected me in a way that it affected other people. I still do my day to day. I go to work. I've never been. Sorry, I've never been a going out person. If I were to go out, it was maybe like once every other month. But you can't do that now. So it's my personally, my day to day hasn't changed since. Other than the fact that I'm working from home for my writing job.
Um, I'm trying to think. How do you think that you'd be able to, or how do you think you'd be able to continue going along with this if we're going to do this for another year?
I wouldn't. I would just do it. It would just be the same process for me. Like I said, all I do is wake up and go to work, and I'll be home by 9, 10 o'clock. I really don't plan to go out anytime soon or anything like that. So it would literally be March all over again. I would just have to mentally be prepared to deal with my parents for another year.
Um, uh, so your dad was laid off. Can you describe where was he working that he was laid off?
He had two jobs. One was at the Marriott, and the other one was at the Sheraton. Two
Okay.
hotels
Yeah,
in
hotels
New
were
York.
hit hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Marriott that he worked at was at Times Square too. So
Okay. Interesting. Do you think that he got sick from work?
no. So so you know how I was saying how some people are ignorant and don't take this seriously. My father's one of those people, or was one of those people. After much talk and yelling from my mother, he understands now that this is a serious thing. Um, when I say I like to watch both spectrums of the news. So my mom gets all her news from Univision, and then my dad thinks that whatever they say is false and Trump is the greatest person ever.
What's that like living in that house with two polar
Yeah.
opposites?
Oh well, it already starts off, at the wrong foot when he's a Red Sox fan and I'm a Yankees fan.
Got it. So how do you go about navigating that? And has it only gotten
Oh
worse with the pandemic?
well. When it comes to baseball, when it comes to the baseball season, that's the only time I'm allowed to curse at my father whenever baseball is going on. When it's sports related, but politics, I try to avoid talking politics with my father. It just gets me agitated.
Got it. Um, how has your mom recovered? I know you mentioned that she
Um,
had some
so
symptoms.
she was diagnosed with pneumonia, and was given a pump and other medicines. And after, I feel like after she got that pump, that the inhaler, she was feeling a lot better, breathing, sleeping a lot better at night. And after maybe a week, she was feeling a lot better. She would say that she was still recovering and that she was still feeling, that her chest and that breathing was difficult. But mind you, she was talking on the phone for hours daily. So in my opinion, I think she was fine. After the symptoms went away.
I was going to ask you what was it like for you to witness her go through that, but if you saw her talking for hours a day, I see.
So it was tough because it was a mix of, she has it in her head that what she had is like, so the night that we took her to the hospital, for example, she said she had chest tightness, she was having a hard time breathing. I asked her, hey, try laying like this, try laying like that. Nothing worked. So I was like, all right, let's go to the hospital. At the hospital, nobody did anything or gave her anything, but she was suddenly feeling better. They gave her medicine. They discharged her. She didn't stay at the night. They just asked her a couple questions. She was feeling better. I'm like, go home. Here's your prescription. And the next day, we got her prescription, and she was fine. And that first, that drive home is like, shoot, if she has to stay in the hospital, this is really serious. But the fact that, once we got there, once the nurses, everybody saw her and she was more calm, and maybe understand that it wasn't, maybe it was her that was giving her that feeling of the chest tightness. But after that experience, I was like, okay, she's fine. She has her medicine. She has her pump. I was just making sure that the pump, which she's never done before, I was just making sure she knew how to properly inhale and hold it in, follow the instructions. But after that night at the hospital, it was pretty calm after that.
Have any of your friends had COVID, or anyone in your circle outside of your fam?
A few people did have it from Whole Foods, but none of them had anything. Like, none of them were hospitalized. None of them had crazy fevers. Everybody just had like a mild cold.
And then I guess, what has it been like over time for you, emotionally or mentally? I know you're still working, but if you have any time to reflect upon what has happened, how have you been feeling?
See, that's the thing. I feel like nothing really has changed. My routine is still the same. So just all I do is just work, and the pandemic hasn't really impeded that. Other than just being stuck at home more.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to mention or talk about?
Off the top of my head, no. I just think you definitely got me talking. They trained you well. I wasn't expecting.
I hope so.
I wasn't expecting to speak this long.
Absolutely. No, I mean, we've had interviews that have been quite long. So.
Okay. No, normally I'm not the talkative type. That's why. No. I was like, oh, this is probably gonna be like a 30-minute interview.
I totally get it. Okay, well, if there's nothing else that you'd like to mention, then I can stop the recording and we can conclude the interview. Okay.
Cool. No, nothing.
Great.
That comes to mind.
Okay. I'm gonna stop the recording. Thank you again for doing this. This will be the end of the interview.